In today's episode, I'm grateful to be joined by Sharon Glasswell. Sharon is a children's author, speaker, coach, and psychotherapist from Australia.
My bin was full. I was tired. I had unresolved issues from being a kid. I was always chasing rainbows and I kind of don't know why. And I said, this is it. I need to get out of the rat race. Don't want to do this anymore. But I want to do something for me. At the end, I remember thinking, gee, if I can do that, if I can do what I just did, then I can do anything. Every time I met an adult, when we got into the nitty-gritty, the problem always came from their childhood. So I'm so passionate about this that, I just can't think about anything else sometimes. If we want to get from here, a problem, to here, a solution, there have to be steps that we have to follow to get here. I'm about turning a negative into a positive. Problem solving isn't about poking your finger at somebody and saying it was you. It's about solving the problem and losing your ego. So I raced down to the school, walked into the classroom, and
In today's episode, I'm grateful to be joined by Sharon Glasswell. Sharon is a children's author, speaker, coach, and psychotherapist from Australia. Sharon dedicates much of her time to teaching mental health wellness education to both children and adults. She is an expert problem solver and creatively empowers people to see their problems from different angles. I'm delighted to welcome Sharon into this community, as she is most definitely my kind of person, and I know she'll be your kind of person too. So welcome to the podcast and community, Sharon Glasswell.
Thank you. It's so very exciting to be here. I'm very excited to chat with you.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you, Sharon. So thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. And how are you doing today? Are you well?
I'm doing great. The weather here is absolutely glorious. I know that you have summer where you are now.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be coming to the beginning of the winter, but it's the most glorious day.
Oh, perfect. I love when that happens. You just have that little gem and you appreciate it all the more. So that's amazing.
Oh, yeah, love Australia.
Love it. And I usually like to begin by telling the listeners, Sharon, how we crossed paths. And our meeting must have been destined, as you're all the way from Australia. I'm from the UK, and yet we crossed paths in the USA. We met through mutual friends. You told me about your incredible work, and I guess the rest is history. And I'm so glad we did cross paths. But before we learn a little bit more about your incredible work, I would love for this community to get to know more about you as a person. So where have you grown and flown? Where did you grow up, and where would you consider home to be now?
So I was brought up in Yorkshire in a small village called Cunithorpe, which is near Harrogate, York, Knaresborough, around there. Very small village, only had 13 houses. So we had to say friends, really. We had to learn how to problem solve, I guess, at a young age, because there was only three kids in the village at the beginning. And so I left there and was married at 20. My husband was in the Air Force, so we moved around quite a lot. He was in Locking, so went down to Bristol, down south. And we kind of then moved up to the Midlands, and we lived there for a little while. Problem was, because my heart was in the countryside, I didn't want to live in the town. I couldn't live in the town. I'm not a city girl by any means, so I need that country. And so when it became time for promotions, the only place that my husband could work would be in the big cities, and we didn't really want that. So we flew. And the first flight on an aeroplane that I ever took was to Australia.
A short flight then.
Yeah. If you don't like it, you can get off. And so I had Penny, who was 2 at the time, and our other daughter, Jemima, was only 7 months old. And we emigrated. We didn't know anyone in Australia. It was a completely a completely big gamble. And we thought, well, we'll go for 2 years. And if we don't like it, well, then we will come back. And that was, 35 years ago.
Wow.
And we're still here now. So this is home. This is home. But occasionally when I fly back to England to visit, then that's home too, isn't it? So, yeah, home is where the heart is. But I think that here we've now got our grandchildren. I've got 3 grandsons that live in Australia near us, with us. And I've got a granddaughter in America. So, yeah.
I love that. And where in that journey from the countryside of England to the countryside of Australia and all of those lovely places in between, did you start to develop your passion for mental health, wellness, education? Has that always been a passion of yours?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, actually. Because now I've got to an age and a place in my study that I can reflect. I can see that I began my journey in mental health many, many years ago, when I was a child. Mm-hmm. That's when I started to question things and say, well, I didn't seem right. What was going on there? And I was a bit of a peacemaker. If there was something going on, I would kind of, I'd take the blame for it. If we needed somebody to own up to something that they hadn't done, I would take the blame for it. And I always used to wonder, why do I do that? Because it's a bit crazy. But now I understand that was just me experimenting with things. I didn't understand what was going on, but I guess now I do. That makes sense. But certainly I always tried to look at problem solving as a way to get what we wanted. I didn't come from a privileged background. I was from the Yorkshire Dales. I didn't speak very good English. My first job was in Harrogate, and I wasn't allowed to answer the phone because my accent was too bad. I had a Yorkshire accent in Yorkshire, and I wasn't allowed to answer the phone. I kind of don't get that. So the interesting thing was when we emigrated, people loved my accent. Mm-hmm. And I got jobs because of my accent. So it was, I was like, that's weird. How did that happen? I was a bit of a naughty kid. I didn't listen. I guess now if I was born now, they would label me ADHD. But back then, we didn't have that. So I didn't do as well at school as I could have done. And I left school with a lot of beliefs that clearly aren't true, about not being good enough and all that kind of thing. But to go into contrast with that, I also wanted to do stuff. I wanted to experiment with stuff. I wanted to have a business. I was from a place where people like us didn't have businesses, but I wanted one because I didn't want to work for anybody else. And so we'd start businesses and they would do well. And it was just all new. But I still had this, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to do this. And I never did as well as I could until I did a firewalking course. And when I did a firewalking course, I walked across that fire, and I remember at the end of it with my feet in some water. And it was a long firewalking course. It was I don't know, 15 feet or something. It was a good old walk. Yeah. And at the end, I remember thinking, gee, if I can do that, if I can do what I just did, then I can do anything. Because it's not about walking on the coals. It's about having the belief and the guts to walk along the coals, to trust that you're not going to get burnt, trust in the system and you're going to be okay. And that was, for me, that was the turning point in my life. To a point, I went to work the next day and resigned and said, that's it, I'm done. I can't work for you anymore. I have to do my own thing. So
wow. Talk about literally walking on fire.
I know. Talk about burning your bridges, Yeah. But what I did, and I left in a really nice way. We stayed in touch.
Mm.
There was no animosity. And I think that was a big lesson for me as well, being able to leave and still have the mutual respect. But I was not prepared to start a business. I took my credit card, which had a limit of $250 on it, and I bought myself, it sounds awful, but I bought myself a bright green suit. This was in the 80s.
Yeah.
And this blodgy shirt that's got more colours on than that picture behind me, and a tapestry briefcase. And that was my I'm going to get it suit. I had nothing else. I'd spent every cent on this one suit. So when I walked into the office of this man in a suit, bearing in mind in Yorkshire, the only people that ever wore suits were, weddings and funerals. So, that was like, whoa, men in suits, this is corporate business. It was a word I didn't use. And so I walked in, held my breath, walked in, and I got the business, again and again and again, I got the business.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was fabulous.
Yeah, good for you.
Yes.
Time. And I love the colour that you continue to bring into the world, both with colourful suits and metaphorically. And where in your life do you think was the point where you thought, I'm a problem solver?
I didn't actually think about it. I just became a problem solver. The business that I was just telling you about was all about sales, and I was the distributor. So if the car yard was a car dealership, if they didn't sell my products, then we didn't get paid. And so I had to train people within the car dealership how to sell my products, and so we had to solve a problem. For one, the girl was on commission. Two, I was also on no sale, no pay. And my $250 had gone, so I needed it back. I needed it back with all his friends. But, I'm also very ethical as well. So I needed to believe in the product that we were selling, and I needed to believe in the backup. And because now it was me and my husband that had the business, I knew we would follow this business through. And so we had to solve problems with the girls. Had the same thing. I'm not good enough. I'm not able to. And once we were able to solve their problems, they were firing. Back in the 80s, I had a girl that was not even 20 years old, and she was on six figures. She was on over $100,000 a year.
Wow.
Just by selling products to people in a way that she knew that, that they would buy. We had we developed a word flow chart, which, I use in everything now, because if we want to get from here, a problem, to here, a solution, there have to be steps that we have to follow to get here. And so, yes, making a sale for a product was the same thing.
Yeah.
But there's no difference to helping somebody get out of a massive, big fog. It's still a process, and it's still a series of steps. But this is thought, whereas sales is speech. It's no difference.
Powerful similarities there, for sure. Yeah. And you've certainly inspired me since we've met. But are there any people that have inspired you on your life journey? Whether that's a life mentor you may have had, or someone who inspires you, particularly in the coaching world, maybe?
Look, everybody that I meet inspires me in some way. I've got to say, I'm sat here with a notepad and pencil as well, because every time I speak to somebody, I always get something out of it. And, there's been so many. I was in business. So I've had a lot of businesses. And so it wasn't until I said to myself, well, actually, my daughter was pregnant with the first grandchildren. And I said, this is it. I need to get out of the rat race. Don't want to do this anymore. But I want to do something for me, but I want to use all the skills that I have. My bin was full. I was tired. I had unresolved issues from being a kid. I was always chasing rainbows, and I kind of don't know why. And so I just wanted a rest. And so I found a company which was called the Tad James Company. Dr. Tad James was an NLP coach and trainer. And I found this company, and I was looking at it, and I thought, yeah, that looks like I need to do this course. I had no intentions of becoming a psychotherapist, none. I was going on this course so that I could relax, empty my bin, if you like, and live at peace. And my mantra for many, many years was, I can't wait till I've got time to have a nervous breakdown. Okay. And I never could get time. It was always on hold. And so I went on this course, and I actually had my breakdown on this course because we looked at things in such depth. We looked at all of the childhood stuff that was, I'll talk to you about this later, but childhood trauma isn't always trauma. It's not always a big, massive event. It's often a 30-second conversation, with somebody that you never see again. That's how complicated your unconscious mind is. And so I was able to go and make peace with that, and then come back to my family a better person, ready to be the nana, and my family, which is what we did. However, funny things happen when you're on these courses. And once you have got some new knowledge, then you can't get rid of it. And the one thing about Tad and his wife, Dr. Adriana James, the one thing about them is that they can see inside your kind of really being. So they made a massive, they made a monumental change for me. I cannot tell you how big their impression was on me, and changed my life. So I will always be grateful to them. Sadly, Tad passed away a couple of years ago, and that was very sad.
Sorry.
But, Adriana is following it on in the true, the true James family fashion. And she's amazing. They're the biggest NLP trainer in the world. And I'm grateful to have been blessed by the best. So, 10 years later, I'm still in touch, still follow them. Still applaud when new people have graduated with them. Yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, and what a wonderful journey you've been on. Coaching clearly means a lot to you. Why do you think it's such an important contribution to the world?
We live in a very different world to the world that I was brought up in. So, the younger generation now have a very different life. And God help me for saying this, but, I don't want to sound like an old woman, but, I often think about back in the day when I was a kid, and I sound like my granny, but I am a granny now. So I guess, if we had a problem to be solved when I was a kid, if my parents had a problem to be solved, or they would all go. Every weekend we used to go to Nana's house, and every weekend we used to go to Grandma's house. And what would happen is, if there was a problem in the family, my granddad would kind of take the dad out for a walk around the garden, and they would look at the garden. He would say, here's my peas and here's my potatoes. And they used to be outside just talking vegetables, well, we thought. And the mums would be inside, around a table having a cup of tea. And if there was a problem that was solved, there was moms, grandmas, sisters, there was 5, 6, 7 women around a table. And they would be able to solve the problem because there was a lot of wisdom coming in. There was years and years and years of wisdom coming in. We don't live like that anymore. We live now in a very different way because we have my mum's in England. My daughter's in the US, it's a very different world that we live in. And not only that, we have the internet. So children aren't following their dads and their granddads around in the garden. They're playing on the phones. And so they're not getting that experience. So while kids have got so much knowledge, they amaze me with their knowledge. Yeah. They don't really have a lot of problem-solving skills. Yeah. If that makes sense. They've got the technical problem-solving skills. They know how to, whatever, with one of the games that they're playing, they know how to, pull a parachute and chase a storm is coming and, go off and load their guns, and they know all the different names of all these things, but they don't know how to build a box. Yeah.
So much of problem solving comes from experience and immersion, right?
Yeah, yeah. And being an apprentice, kids aren't grown-up apprentices anymore. Like they used to be.
Yeah.
So they're kicked out of school. They don't know what they're doing. And so coaches, we didn't have coaches. We had neighbours. We had the old lady in the village that we could go and talk to. We always had someone that had the knowledge to be able to guide us. We don't have that anymore. We have Dr. Google, and that's a bit dangerous.
Yes. Definitely can be dangerous. And yeah, I love how you phrase that, about apprentices. And it is. We learn from lived experience and immersion. And I really was inspired by your children's book and your journey to publishing such a valuable resource. And I thought the book was such a creative way of getting your message across. So please, could you tell us a little bit more about the children's book that you've created? Why did you create Recycle Your Day, and what do you hope the story contributes to the world?
Okay, wow. Okay. Well, like I said, I never wanted to be a psychotherapist. I never thought that would happen, but it did happen, because when I came home from a training, people said, "Oh, can you talk to me? Can you help me with this? Can you help with this?" So it kind of grew really quickly. But I never saw children. I was always taught, don't work with adults, don't work with animals or children. I didn't really want to work with children. But every time I met an adult, when we got into the nitty-gritty, the problem always came from their childhood. And it was always a little tiny problem. And it was such a problem that parents would have overlooked it, or they would have said, "Oh, don't be silly. It'll be okay tomorrow. They'll forget about it. It's okay. Try harder, whatever." But the answer is always really simple. And I've used those same answers to the kids myself. And we don't realize that, those kids that are being kept up all night about something really silly. We think really silly.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, I'd been asked to see a kid. Somebody's wanted a kid. When you see my child, I'm like, "Oh, right, okay, but I don't know if I can help a child, because I don't really know, much about children." So the child came to see me, lovely kid, told me about the problem. Oh my gosh, it was a silly little problem, just like the adults had. It was the same problem, except his problem was happening today, and the parents' problem happened years ago. And so I was thinking, how can I explain the intricacies of the unconscious mind and how it works to a kid? Because, neural pathways are grown, and bad behaviors become neural pathways, and we have to change the way the brain thinks in order to grow new neural pathways. And it's quite difficult to explain that to an adult. So how was I going to explain it to a child? And so I said, just imagine that you've got a bin, and it follows you everywhere you go. And every time something happens to you in the bin, that experience goes. Now, if it's a good experience, that's great. But if it's a bad experience, like your friend pinched your ball or won't play with you or whatever it is, then when you get to bed on a night, that bin says, hey, time to empty, and it will empty itself all over the child's head. And that's when they start to worry. And if they happen to tell the mum, I'm worried, Mum, about school because, Johnny stole my ball, Mummy would say, oh, well, I'll ring the school tomorrow and we'll get it back. But it's bigger than that. It's then they'll think about, my mum's come to get you into trouble, and it big. And so I explained to the child that, if we could look at what was inside the bin before we go to bed, look at it from different angles. What kind of a day did little Johnny have? What was going on in his life? Was your ball the same as his ball? How could this have happened? And, I said we go back through problem-solving steps.
Yeah.
What was the first thing that happened that made that kid pinch a ball? Because it didn't just go, oh, there's a ball, I'll have that. There was something that happened before that. And so when I explained it to the child, his mum was in the other room and the child was with me in here. And I heard this little voice shout from the room, do I have a bin? Can I have a bin? Can you help me empty my bin? And so I thought, yes, you have a bin, except in yours is bigger and there's more trash in it.
Yeah.
And so what happens is when the bin's been there for years and years and years, we actually can't identify it was little Johnny that did that because it's all mushed up with all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And what happens is when an opportunity comes along and you think, oh, shall I go for that job? Hang on, I have to look in my bin. And I look in my bin and I see what's in the bin. And if what's in the bin tells me I'm not good enough, I'm not even going to apply.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I wrote the book, because that's not why I wrote the book. That's why I started creating this metaphor and this little story to tell kids. And then people started bringing their kids to me. So, and I would see an adult and then I would see a kid, or the parent would ring me up about the child, say, oh, I need to see you first. So this analogy was actually becoming really awesome because, people were realizing that, I've got to put my safety belt on first.
Yeah.
I've got to put my mask on first before I can attend to the kids. And then, this started to change. My daughter was living with me with the grandchildren, and she'd gone through quite a big separation, and they were living with us, and they were going to school, which is just at the bottom of my street, and the children weren't settling in the school. And so and they're smart, these kids, they're really smart. And they're a bit like me. They kind of look at stuff and think, how did that happen? They won't just accept authority says, you got to do it this way. They want to know, why do I have to do it this way? I love it about them, but it's really difficult at school. And so they were having difficulties at school. Now they would run home. So there's 3 kids and twins and one just a year and a bit younger. And the youngest one was okay, but the twins weren't so good. If they weren't happy with the situation, they would run home.
Yeah.
And there was one particular time that one of the twins had gone into was in the classroom, and I got a phone call from the headmaster, and he said, you need to come down here because this child has trashed the classroom.
Mm.
Oh, what do you mean he's trashed the classroom? He said, it's trashed, Sharon, it's trashed. Everything is trashed. So I raced down to the school, walked into the classroom, and I had to take steps backwards. It was like, everything was upside down. The tables, the chairs, the books, all the pictures on the walls had been ripped down. Everything had fallen. And I said, what happened? And they said, well, he just trashed the class. I said, no. How did this happen? What happened?
Yeah.
And the headmaster didn't quite understand the question. He's like, well, he couldn't have some things, so he trashed the classroom. So when everyone had gone, I said to the teacher, look, and I need to, and he was underneath the table hiding. And so I just put my arms out. I said, come on. And we had a big hug. And I said, look, when you're ready to come out, we're going to clean this up. We're going to have a little chat. But I want you to know that you're safe. It's okay. I'm not cross. I will find out how this happened.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't do that. But I'm about turning a negative into a positive.
Yeah.
And what had happened was the teacher had taken something off him. And she'd said, you can have it back at playtime. Now, playtime had come, and the teacher said, no, you can have it at the end of playtime. But he knew he couldn't play with it at the end of playtime. So he was not happy. So he just tapped something from the table onto the floor. Because teachers aren't allowed to touch children anymore, they said, well, that's not going to get it back for you. And so he did it again, and then he did it again, and then he did it again. And the teacher followed him around as he was trashing the classroom.
Yeah.
So I said, I just want you to know what we're telling him off for this. And, you know, we'll fix the classroom, which we did. And I talked to the teacher, and the teacher was very much aware of where the problem had gone wrong, how it started. And so when you can trace it back to something like that, we can then stop and we can say to both parties, what could we have done instead?
Yeah.
Both parties learn a lesson. You know, it's not, no one has to be at fault. Problem solving isn't about poking your finger at somebody and saying it was you.
Mm-hmm.
It's about solving the problem and losing your ego.
Yeah.
You know, and so we were able to solve that problem and move on. Now, that's when I decided that I actually needed to do something else, because I was again, nothing changed. The kids would still run away from home, or away from school, because they wanted to come where they felt safe, but they didn't know how to solve the problem that they were having because they couldn't articulate how they were feeling. And so I decided that it was now time to write this book for the children, for our children. It's okay me seeing other people's kids, but I needed to be able to help my grandchildren too. So I wrote the book, and I told the principal that I was writing the book. I wrote it for him as well, and I also wrote it for the teachers, because if I thought they could, you know, teachers don't have to always be right, but they think they have to be because they're the teacher, and they're scared that the parent will come and get them if they can't prove that they were right. And a lot of parents are abusive towards teachers. These are people that are working so hard. Do you know, in 2013 in Australia, there was 14% of children had mental health problems in schools across the whole board. 14%. That's 4 kids in every class.
Wow.
Now, when I was a kid and I went to school, there was 53 kids in the whole school. So, you know, there was 4 kids, I think, in my little class bit. And I think we had about 3 years in each class. So it was a really tiny little school. But can you imagine a class of 30 kids and 4 of them have got mental health issues? So those are my kids. They were the ones that were running. It's not that they've got mental health issues, but they're not mature enough emotionally to be able to handle what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, I did a speech, a TED Talk, months ago, and I wanted to get the up-to-date figures. So I rang the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, and I asked them, what are the figures now? Guess what they were?
I hate to think.
62%.
Wow.
62% of children. This is from kindy, so age 4 up to 16. That's about 17 kids in every class.
Yeah.
Has got, you know, can you imagine being a teacher with, you know, 17 kids? They're the class clown, you know?
Yeah.
They're the kid running away. They're the kid throwing paper aeroplanes at the other kids. They're the kids that aren't even speaking. They're the kids that won't come into class because they're hiding behind the bins. I mean, you know, until I got those figures, I thought it was just our kids. I thought I just, had friends who had kids like this, because there'd be all the mothers and grandmothers at the school on a morning trying to get the kids into school. And the poor teachers have got to stay there all day and work with them. Yeah. And so this book was needed. It really needed to be able to, to teach children that they can look at different angles, at different why, how did that happen? And let's take it back to the beginning, and then let's change what happened at the beginning next time. If you've got a child and that's, say, 3, and you've got a nice, beautiful wall that you've just had painted, and there's some crayons on the floor, the kid's going to crayon on the wall. Guaranteed the child will crayon on the wall. And when you come up to the child and say, why did you do that? They're going to go, I don't know. And then we tell them off for drawing on the wall. The problem isn't drawing on the wall. The problem is crayons and the wall. They're being creative. They're going, oh, crayons on the wall. That's like, not having that last chocolate because it's not yours. It's impossible for them not to do that. But if you understand how it happens, then you just put something in front of the wall, or you move the crayons, or you go for a walk. But, so I wrote this book. I needed to write this book. And by the time I'd written it, and I went to see the principal, the headmaster of the school, and I said, I've got the book, and he read it. And he's like, wow, that's a really good book. And I said to him, do you see my boys in there? And I'll never forget it. He said to me, Sharon, I see me in there. I can see myself in there. And the whole point is that the teachers are able to say to the kids, I see how my reaction to what you did has caused you to, get into that emotional state. So let's make sure that next time we can do it different.
Yeah. And it's such important work. And thank you for your advocacy and how you continue to share it, because adults are big kids, right? You can see where these small problems that seem insignificant, sometimes very significant, are unresolved, and that travels with us into adulthood. So we are just all big kids. So to me, it makes so much sense why we're seeing the same problems as children and as adults. And what does it feel like sharing your own work with the world? What were the maybe barriers that you came across in terms of creating this book and putting it into more spaces?
That's a really good question. Well done.
Thanks.
That's a really good question. Because I grew up feeling not really quite as good as everyone else, which is what a lot of kids grow up not feeling as good as other people. When I got into sales, so I've had a lot of businesses. I've had a real estate agency. We owned a real estate agency in the wonderful Noosa, and we turned that business around. It was very easy. I find it very easy to sell something that belongs to somebody else. Very easy. Mm-hmm. We had the distribution business. Find that very easy to sell this product. This product is awesome. We're going to sell it. Mm-hmm. I had a restaurant, and we used to do a lot of weddings and functions, and we built that business up. Oh, it was amazing. We did the most beautiful weddings and Valentine's nights. We had rose petals on the floor. It was just lovely. But I wasn't selling me. I was selling my chef. I was selling my beautiful historic, location. So when you ask me that question, in order for me now to go out and talk to the world about what I have done, that was huge.
Yeah,
it was huge, because now I've got to go and, oh, look how good I am. Oh, no, we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to do that. So I did find it really difficult.
Yeah.
But sometimes the message is bigger than the person, and you've just got to suck it up. So the next step for me was marketing the book and the program. And the way to do that is to get out and do public speaking and podcasts and people, and get your message out there. And I'm a very humble person, and I found it really difficult. So learning how to speak was difficult for me. But luckily for me, I like talking in metaphors, as you may have noticed.
Yeah.
And so I just use my metaphors, and that comes naturally for me.
Yeah, well, good for you. And again, problem solving, finding a way of, I struggle with speaking, so how can I solve this problem? Well, I need to do more of it. And actually, I can really get my point across through metaphors. And you can see, again, how it's little things like, how did we get there? You were saying earlier in the episode about how when you were back home in the UK, you weren't allowed to answer the phone because of your accent.
I know. Like that, nothing like building a kid up, eh?
Yeah. So, but we can see how these things then stay with you, this idea of I'm not very articulate.
Yeah. The thing about public speaking as well is that everyone that is successful has a story. Yeah. And they have a really big story. Some of the great speakers that I see, they've lost their legs, or they've lost their arms, or my speaker mentor lost his arm and his leg won't bend. And so they've got a really great story. And I was talking to a speaker coach of mine the other day about an upcoming speech that I'm doing. And she said, tell me about your stuff. So I told her a couple of things, and she said, you need that one. It needs to pop, and you need, that's really bad. And I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. And I'll tell you the story. Mm-hmm. When I was a little girl, I was blown up by a firework. I went to the firework and lit the firework, and I must have been about 6. Must have been 6. Can't think if I was older. And the firework had gone out, and we were told, they used to teach us, by the way, firework safety at school. Now, you might not believe this. This is the truth. And so I went and I lit my firework. It went out, so I went back to light it again, and it blew up. Fused my eyelashes together, lost all my eyebrows, singed all my face, my hair. I was very lucky I didn't get burned. And the next day at school, our crazy principal, headmistress, she called me up to the front of the school and told the whole school that I'd let the school down because I was the only person that had an accident. Can you believe that? So she's like, you need to tell that story. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I worked on it for a day.
Yeah.
And then I said to her, I'm not using that. And she said, why? I said, because the whole point of my book is that those big events have actually made me stronger.
Yeah.
They're a story to tell that made me really strong. And, boom, when the shit hits the fan, what do? You go and sell manure,
Yeah.
And so it didn't work for the story. It didn't work for the book, certainly wouldn't help my. And so I said to her, look, how am I going to get this speech to be able to work for the purposes? And so I thought, well, you know what? The other thing that happened to me when I was 4, I nearly drowned in a sheep dip. And I pulled the lid on. I was sitting on a wall and I fell into the sheep dip. The lid came down, and my dad put his hand in a hole in the lid, and he grabbed my hair and he held me by the hair until help came and they worked out how to get the lid off. And this was a sheep dip full of arsenic, Meg.
Wow.
And I was 4. But when I think about that event, I think about getting changed and the water being yellow, and my auntie getting me one of her kids' jumpers, and that became my sheep dip jumper. I was allowed to keep it. So that became a bit of a medal too.
Yeah.
So if you're in the right environment, when you have something bad happen to you, if it's handled the right way, it doesn't become a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so my speaker wants this big dramatic beginning. And I said, okay, all right, I'm gonna say, you know what it was that sorted me, that made it so that I didn't feel as good as everybody else? Because I've been trying to work out, shall I use this story about the firework and then talk about the firework? Shall I use this story about the shoot? Talk about the shoot. You know what? And you've heard me do this. My story, what happened to me that made 40 years worth of I'm not good enough, it's really bland.
Yeah.
It was one morning where kids had a great time playing with these kids in town. So it was a different environment. I was feeling really posh. We had to take our shoes off to go in the house,
Yeah.
We didn't have that in the country. Here it was very different.
Yeah.
And I had this really lovely play, and I felt like a different person.
Yeah.
And maybe I had a glimpse of my life now back then.
Yeah.
But their brother told me that I wasn't allowed to play with them in the afternoon. They didn't like me. And that made me feel I'm not good enough to play with them. They don't want to play. They can't even be bothered to tell you need to go home. I would have probably been 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And that stayed with me. That was a 3-hour event. Well, it was not even a 3-hour. It was like a 10-second event.
Yeah.
That's what we need to find. So to go way back, I've gone off track a bit from the question that you asked me, but it's not about me.
Yeah.
I've finally been able to find that, yes, I'm the one that has to promote myself, but I wrote this book for you all using your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And we need it.
You definitely do. And it's so powerful. I've been lucky enough to witness you sharing what you could call a children's book, but with adults. And like I said, we're all big kids, and it was really moving to see how emotional and close to the surface these emotions were for the adults. And to see, how much the story resonates just is a testament to how important your words are. And I know problems can be hugely overwhelming, and they are definitely not all equal. But please, could you share some of your biggest tips on how you first approach a problem, and how do you try to manage the overwhelm?
In actual fact, because of exactly that question, this is the book. And I also wrote a workbook and a journal as well for children and parents to be able to understand how do they do it. And so what I do in this book is I actually describe how the child in the storybook worked out his problems. So how did it happen? So first of all, we've got to understand the problem. Now, this could be, and this system works for everything, by the way. Mm-hmm. It works for kids. Their school friend pinches their lunch at lunchtime, or it works for, my boss is not treating me the same as everybody else, or it works for my marriage isn't working. What can I do about this? It works for negotiating hostages off a plane. This is how it works. Very simple. There are 4 steps to recycling problems. And the first one is you've got to understand the problem. Yep. You've got to understand the problem from everybody's side. What do I see as the problem? Now, what do they see as the problem? Because I see that they're my problem, but they see that I'm their problem. So who else has got part of this? How can we see it from everyone's point of view? What if we were to rise up, if you like, in a hot air balloon and look at the problem from up here somewhere, and then we can see what this person and what this person are actually doing, and we can see the whole big picture. And so once we fully understand the problem, like, what's this really about? If anyone ever comes up to you and says something really mean and you think, well, that was pretty left field, where did that come from? What's it really about? What is it really about? And often it's really about the fact that, I've just got a speeding fine and I can't pay it. Great. So you come to see me for a coffee and you're just rude to me. Well, yeah, I'm cross because I've walked in here with an emotion of anger and fear because I don't know where I'm going to get the money from. And it's not my fault. It's victimship, you've just told me to grow up, boom. So then when we're ready to start to, understand this problem, what happened? What was it? Did I not hear you say something, or did I miss something, or did I say something that you misunderstood? Let's go and actually look at it completely. And then we'll look at it, what will happen if nothing changes. If we just continue and we don't solve this problem, what will happen? We could lose our relationship. I could lose my job. I could lose our hostages. So what am I going to do about it? How do I feel about it? Separating those emotions. So once you understand that you're not in a good position, I understand the problem now. So what am I going to do about it? Well, the first thing I'm going to do about it in step 2 is I'm going to see who can help me. Who can help me recycle this problem? Mm-hmm. So, for a child, it might be my mum, my friend might be able to help me. My teacher maybe can help me. We recommend that kids all have a problem-solving coach. That's a special person. And it might be your mum, but if your mum is the kind of mum that says, they did what? I'm going down that school and I'll sort them out. I ain't your problem-solving coach. Mm-hmm. So we need to find a problem-solving coach, somebody that can see things from different sides, and actually coach them. And so, how can they help me? What's their role going to be in this problem-solving? Maybe my teacher can talk to the kid's mum and find out a bit about what's going on. Or, maybe my friend and I can work something out together. Or maybe my problem-solving coach might have some advice. So how can they help me? Now, how do I feel? I kind of feel okay now because I kind of think it's working. I kind of feel, we're getting there. I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel a bit more positive about it. And so now what have I learned about this? Well, I've learned that, I can get out of that emotion and I can make a plan. And this is the beginning. So that's it. And pat yourself on the back here, because guess what? Step 2 of working out your problem is on the way. Step 2 in a marriage that's not working, for example, could be that, who can help them? Well, it might be your mum, but if your mum hates your husband, it's not going to be your mum. It might be a friend, but I doubt it because usually friends say leave them. Yeah. So who's going to be the person that can help you get where you want and give you ownership of your role in this problem-solving experience, which is pretty cool. So then everyone goes and does their plan and we can find out what actually happened. The child maybe wanted a friend, came up to talk to you, you didn't hear them, they lost their confidence. It was too late then. They were going in to just say, let me just play with the ball here. And they lost it. So they ran away. Bang. End of mess. So now we can understand where the kid's coming from. Now we can make a plan. Things we discover in step 2 about the problem by looking at different sides, And once we know, and this is the thing, we can look at things that we know are true. Then we can look at things that we thought were true, but now we know aren't true. Now we can look at the possibility of what could be true instead. Now we can start to fix the problem. This is where I want to be. I've just got to work out the steps to get there. So now I'm recycling the problems and I can work out how this will not happen again. So what we go through what I've learned, and then step 3 is to make the plan. Who can help me make the plan? Okay, so my friend's going to help me make the plan. The new kid, the one that I fell out with, is going to help me make a plan. We're going to make this plan together. And we're going to make a to-do list. And we're going to say sorry if we need to. And, we're going to move on from there. And then we're going to make a plan to do something afterwards that will take us to a place of joy. Mm-hmm. So once we've done that, we can then move to step 4. And step 4 is seeing it in our head happening. We see it. We do mental rehearsal on it. We see it happening. Now we can go to sleep because we feel okay. We actually can't wait to go to school to fix this problem.
Yeah.
And so then tomorrow we go and fix the problem and we monitor it. If it doesn't work, we come back and we start the system again. And so that is very, very simply, it explains to the children and their parents, that kid was mean because his tummy hurt, just like my tummy hurt. Oh my gosh, we both had the same thing.
Yeah.
So then when you've solved one problem, you know that you can solve another. Now you know that things that are true also incorporate, wow, I can change my thoughts. And then once you've done this a few times with a few different problems, then they can start to actually see things on the bright side. This is the thing. If you've got any teachers that listen to your podcast, and I'm sure you have many,
yeah.
Can you imagine if instead of having detentions at school and having children just go and sit in an empty classroom staring at the walls, if they had a problem-solving coach that could be, a non-teaching assistant that could actually go into that problem-solving classroom where the detentions happen, and they could have both the kids that caused the problem in there and they can solve it together. Can you imagine?
A game changer for sure.
Wouldn't it? And if they taught this as part of the curriculum, and it's fun, mm-hmm. because when I teach it, when I teach this, I got my bin, as you know, and and for adults I've got this bin, but for kids I've got this bin.
Yeah,
and we can actually put this bin on the floor. And we can actually throw the balls into it, hurt, it's not fair, I don't have time. People like me can't do that. I'm not good enough. It's always my fault. I always fail. I'm stupid, ugly, dumb, whatever it is, those balls go into our bin. And when enough of those balls goes in the bin, the bin overflows.
Yeah.
And that was me. Before I did that training 10 years ago, that was me. I was just desperate for 10 minutes so that I could have a nervous breakdown. Of course, I never got one. Because I learned how to empty my bin. And I think if we can get this into schools as a program, and it can be used as a fundraiser as well, because the children can buy the book and certain portion of that money can go to the school, and then they can buy something for the school that reminds them about the bin. Kids love to have a goal to work to.
Mm. Yeah.
The one thing that I know for sure, 100%, is there is no bad kids. There's no bad kids. They're doing best. They want to be good, but we're not helping them.
Mm-hmm. And your book is going to, I'm so excited because it really is going to help people, both adults and children. And what I love about it is it's all simple and actionable, and it actually helps you create a system for problem solving, because that framework could be used towards any problem that you have.
Everything. I use it in my business. I used it to be able to public speak. Mm-hmm. I have a problem. I don't want to go there. I don't want to get on that stage. No.
And that's so important that it's simple and actionable. And because when we have a problem, usually we're in a heightened state of emotions, right? So that's why it's so important that to be able to problem solve in a situation where your emotions are heightened, you're maybe not quite behaving yourself, there's other people involved, it's so important to have something accessible and simple that you can rely on in that moment.
It has to be, because this is how your mind works. Your unconscious mind will fight or flight,
yeah.
You know? And if you are in a state of fear, then your true being vanishes, you're gone, because now you turn into the primate. You know, now you're in survival mode, and that isn't who you are. You know, you can't be spiritual and show the wonderful, beautiful side of you when a bear's about to eat you. You have to turn into a killer.
Yeah,
and so you can't be. And one of the things and this is why I was surprised when I ended up speaking with children, because I used to see the adults that had the biggest problems that other people didn't want to help with. You know, I see the assholes. The assholes, people that had the worst behavior ever, you know, whose marriages were falling apart because of their bad behavior. And, you know, and I used to say, is this marriage worth saving? If there's a grain of sand that's worth saving, we will work together to be able to work. And it was never about marriage guidance. It was always about how, the same 4-step. How do you do what you do? How do you end up taking those drugs? Or how do you end up at that dance hall at 3:00 in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
What is damaged that isn't who you are? What's in your bin? And that was what, you know, that they were my clients for many, many years. And they were nice people, but they were damaged. The bin was full. And they were able to help themselves. The behavior is not the person, number one.
Yeah, completely agreed. Yeah. Thank you. And I think that's such an important takeaway from this conversation. You know, I genuinely believe that we are all inherently good. We just behave badly sometimes, or we make bad choices. And getting to the root of that problem and finding out how it started is so important. And I know a key step that you mentioned in problem solving is, like you said, having a problem solving coach. We very rarely can solve problems on our own. And I know you've been coaching for a very long time now, and you really have built an incredible community around you. So what does community mean to you? And has your idea of community changed as you've continued to evolve as a coach?
Yes, I think that it takes a village to raise a child. Mm-hmm. It's an old-fashioned saying. Yeah. And of course, we don't have villages anymore.
No.
You know, we live in towns where we don't know our neighbours.
Yeah.
And so we have to create a community as best we can. You and I met in California.
We did.
At the retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And that community of people that go to that retreat every year is so special.
Yeah.
To me. That is their community, yet they only meet once a year. Bad COVID. And they live for that weekend, some of them. Some of them have to, that's their only normal weekend of the year, because they live in the big cities. They don't know their neighbours. They don't have their support system. So the support system becomes online.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that community is really important. I also feel that you don't just have one community. You know, that part of my life is really special, but I've got a completely other side of my life, which is very corporate, as have a lot of people that go to that retreat. We have professors, and we have librarians, and we have, you know, we have a massive range of every single career that you could imagine go to that retreat, and everyone they have that one common bond, which is love.
Yeah.
It is love. I mean, it's just amazing. I went there to speak and to do some classes, and I'm sucked hook, line, and sinker. I'm a Zenite. I just adore those people. I would do anything for them, you know. So that is a perfect example of a great community. Somebody lost their job a couple of weeks ago, and then their pet got really sick, and they didn't have the money. Boom, the money's there. 3 days later, they've got the money because everyone just chucks a bit in. So that is a perfect community. It's really important. We're building communities now in where I am in our suburbs. We have a Facebook community group, which is what we call a buy nothing site. And so if anyone has something that they don't want, an old vase or, kids' sneakers or sweatshirts or anything they don't need anymore, school uniforms, you can pop it on the free site and your neighbours will come and collect it. And it's been a great new way to build the community. I'm meeting more people from my suburb than I've ever met before. And if you don't have them in the UK, I would suggest start one because they're just fantastic,
Yeah, we do. And like you said, it's such a good way to community build, sharing, giving. And I don't think community is a two-way street. I don't think you can have community without that balance of giving and receiving, really.
Yeah. And I think communities are very different to what they used to be. When I was a kid, back in the olden days, there was a community was defined by the houses and the street. And, that was the community. You would meet play bingo together or, have the school fetes together or whatnot. We don't have that anymore because schools were 50 kids. So, 50 families, 40 families, whatever, 30 families. But now there's 600-700 kids in the school. You can't have that community there. You've got to make it. It doesn't evolve.
Yeah, we really do have to, I think, work just that little bit harder to create the communities around us. And we've really, you and I have been very lucky to been invited to and been part of such beautiful communities. But I think then that's on us to rise to the challenge and then be a part of that community. That takes work from all parties. And I definitely think it takes a little bit more effort these days. But the effort is always worth it. And things have certainly changed, over the years. We live in a very different world now than it used to be. What do you think we need more of in the world?
I think we need less judgment. I think we need more acceptance. I think acceptance is the key. If we don't judge people, we just accept them. Judging people is looking at their behavior and making a decision on their behavior. That's you judging somebody. But in order for you to do that, then you're having a similar behavior yourself. I think the world would be a much better place if we didn't judge and if we dropped a lot of the rules that we think we have to live by. We don't have to live by those rules.
Yes. So thank you for sharing that and the important context as well, because if we could all judge less and understand more, I think you're right, we'd have far less problems in the world and we'd all be better for it when we come from a place of understanding and we don't judge and have this conclusion that we've already drawn that opens up us to growth, to love, to be able to move forward, to problem solve. So I think that's hugely important. And is there anything you would like to see more of in the coaching industry? How do you hope your own coaching will continue to develop?
I would like to see more coaches.
Yeah.
I really would like to see more coaches, more problem-solving coaches. I would like to see one problem-solving coach in every school. That is my desire. It would change the world. It really would, if that could happen. I think that, that I would like to see. I'm so passionate about this that, I just can't think about anything else sometimes when I see kids fighting in the playground or, when we pulled our children out of the school that I was telling you about, where the kids were, and I was called from the directorate, and the woman called me and she said to me, I just want to thank you on behalf of the school, everyone that you treated with dignity and respect. It wasn't a fun time. The children weren't happy. The school wasn't happy. Teachers were unhappy. It was no one's fault. It was just a situation where there was frustration from every single person involved in the problem. And she said, you kind of kept us all together, because I was coaching them. I was coaching us all through it, myself included.
Yeah.
And she said, and, that's very rare that happens. So, thank you for that. We don't need to fall out when we have problems. We can solve them, and a lot better. You get more, what is it? You get more honey with sugar than, I forget the sentence, but you be kindness. If we all have kindness, the world is a different place. Can you imagine if people didn't judge and if people were kind to each other? We wouldn't have a problem.
No, we wouldn't. And we're also, we see time and time again, we're also much better together than when we're divided. And we don't have to be divided when a problem occurs if we can come from a place of understanding. And Sharon, thank you so much for the heart and the thoughts you've shared today. I'm hopeful that your coaching will continue to help create positive change in the world. And I would love for more people to benefit from your work. So how can people do this? Where can they find you?
So they can find me. I am the only Sharon Glasswell on the planet. So that's easy. So they can find me on the net. Just Google Sharon Glasswell. If there are any teachers that would like me to have the program on schools, then again, they can contact me that way. I've got a website, sharonglasswell.com, which at the moment is mainly towards the school projects. I'm playing with that at the moment, so you wouldn't get the best out of it.
Yeah.
Or you can find me as a professional speaker, trainer of NLP on youtheconqueror.com.au.
Amazing. Thank you.
And, so I'm here, and I will always answer. If someone sends me a message and they need help, I will always answer.
I can confirm she will. And thank you, Sharon, for all the good you're doing in the world. To anyone, if any of those projects seem of interest to you, please do contact Sharon, because she's doing incredible work in the world. And finally, following all the wisdom you've already graciously shared, Sharon, do you have any final parting words of advice that have served you well that you would like to share with the community?
I think never give up. Find a way. There is a way. There is a way. But none of us are going to get out of this alive, really. So we might as well, I don't know if I always use the metaphor of reincarnation. I don't want to have to go through all of that again. So let's just learn these lessons as quick as we can, and let's leave the world a better place. But, my little mantra is, there is no problem too big that you cannot solve it yourself. There is no problem too big that I cannot solve it myself. There isn't one.
I love it. Thank you so much for finishing on that very, very wise advice. And Sharon, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for sharing your thoughts, heart, and energy with us all. Thank you for your creativity. Thank you for caring. Thank you for your compassion and understanding, and thank you for your courage. You continue to empower others through positive change and help them create that in their own lives. And thank you for being my kind of person.
And Meg, thank you for being my kind of person. Thank you for, it's been lovely.
It's an absolute pleasure.